This is a podcast about new crops. You're going to love it. Join us on The Cutting Edge, a podcast in search of new crops for Wisconsin.
Someday, my hope is that people won't buy products with hemp in them because they have hemp in them. They'll buy products that have hemp in them because it was the right product at the right price with the right performance. And, we will integrate into existing supply chains without needing to be a novelty.
Welcome to another episode of The Cutting Edge, a podcast in search of new crops for Wisconsin. I'm Stefan Mirsky, Outreach Specialist for Emerging Crops with UW-Madison Extension. Co-hosting with me today to talk about hemp processing is Philip Alberti, Research Program Manager in the Shelby Ellison Lab at UW-Madison. Morning, Philip.
Morning, Stefan.
I'm really excited to talk to our three guests today who are all pioneers in hemp processing and growing, especially for grain and fiber hemp. As the hemp industry grows, the processing side becomes a really crucial piece of the supply chain. And as we've seen, it's been one of the limiting factors to scaling up grain and fiber hemp. So let's dive into the conversation and hear from our guests on how they're trying to change that.
I'm James Forbes, and I'm one of the co-founders of Tiger Fiber. We're a hemp fiber processor located in St. Louis, Missouri, with operations on both the Illinois and Missouri side of the Mississippi River.
Thanks for having me. I'm Trey Riddle. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for I&D Hemp. I&D Hemp is a family-owned and operated processor in Montana. We process both hemp grain for food and feed applications and hemp straw for fiber applications.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on. Alex Mootz here, founder of Complete Ag Solutions. We are a hemp farm, mostly concentrated in hemp fiber production for pulp, paper pulp. We also have flower fields on the cannabinoid side, and we're just getting our feet wet into processing. Just happy to be here. Two of these companies I've looked up to and just excited to be a part of the conversation. So thanks for having me.
So our first question for all three of you, and just feel free to jump in, is so you've all made big investments in this fledgling industry, and you're all betting pretty big on hemp. I'm just curious why. Like, what is motivating you to get into this space?
Sure. Yeah, I can start off. This Trey at I&D Hemp. We're really excited about this space. I&D Hemp was actually started 10 or so years ago by Ken Elliott, our founder, who was a geologist working in remediation of Superfund sites, doing Superfund site cleanup. And he got interested in hemp as a phytoremediator originally, and in Montana started looking at that, but then actually got pretty excited about what was happening in Canada around the grain, and saw the agronomy in southern Alberta, southern Saskatchewan, fairly similar to Montana, and saw an opportunity for providing farmers in Montana with an alternative crop, something else to diversify their crop rotation, change up the impact on the soil, get them out of commodity price fluctuations into a cash crop, specialty crop contracting, and add jobs in rural communities. So that's where we began, was on the grain side. And then, really got excited about the nutritional value of the grain as a superfood, and being able to support better eating, around the globe, hopefully, but certainly here locally. And then I&D Hemp got excited about solving a problem for the farmers, which was the straw that was left in the field from the grain crops, and actually saw that as an opportunity. And now really getting behind the potential to replace energy intensive or polluting products or materials in the marketplace with sustainable ones, with hemp as being an ingredient in there. So we're really excited about the sustainability and the carbon sequestration opportunities with hemp. But at the end of the day, I&D Hemp is all about connecting farmers to innovators in industry and making an impact in the communities that we live and work in, and we think hemp is a catalyst for that.
Oh, hey, this is James. I'm happy to hop on and give my 2 cents. Very similar to a lot of the things that Trey said, about the impacts hemp can have. Tiger fiber, has been an idea since before the 2018 Farm Bill. Our background came from a lot of just enthusiasm around what cannabis could do for global good. But around, like 2016, when we started getting exposed to fledgling research being done at the university levels across the country with what hemp fiber and grain and what was dubbed industrial hemp could do, that got our attention. Personally, I've been in sustainable agriculture and social enterprise for, shoot, I'm 38 now, so about 12 years. And, the thing that I see the biggest impact that hemp can have is really bridging rural and urban interest around sustainability and just sheer economics. I'm here in St. Louis, Missouri, which is, a pretty dense metropolitan area with a lot of manufacturing and a lot of infrastructure. And we're surrounded by some of the most productive, farmland for corn and soybeans, and thinking, on global impact beyond just the stuff that we can make out of it by simply putting a crop like hemp into a commodity rotation and the reduction of a lot of the synthetic herbicides and pesticides that we see, flowing into the river that flows into the ocean. That reduction and just that effect alone is something we see as a big driver for global good. And then you add in topsoil building, stuff that we've lost, almost 50% of the Earth's topsoil in the last 150 years of commercial farming. That plus the potential for gigantic carbon sinks throughout, agricultural America is just huge. And so that blended with all the unique things that hemp can disrupt, commercially, we think it's just something really that ought to be pursued, given that this is the first time in my lifetime I've had the opportunity to pursue, a career path post prohibition in anything. The last time something happened on this level was alcohol.
Yeah, Alex, you're yeah, I mean, just to echo, I mean, most of the stuff that they have said, I mean, I think that's kind of on everyone's top of mind. And those are the top key points for why we all stay really focused on it. For me, the plant did a lot for me and has done a lot for many disabled veterans like me across the country. So my interest started off on, like a lot of farmers in the cannabinoid space, which I probably don't need to tell anybody on this phone. That it's been a long 3 years on that side of the industry. But when I got back here, I'm a first generation farmer and started getting, my feet in the dirt and started working our way through this whole thing. And, that's when I connected with a lot of small rural farms, family farms, 100-acre, 200-acre dairies. I mean, Wisconsin, I believe we lead the country in farm bankruptcies, just on the dairy side, a lot of these small family farms. So meeting these farmers, hearing their story and seeing how hard they work to put food on their table while working another job, just doesn't seem right. I look at this as an opportunity to revitalize my hometown, revitalize hometowns just like mine, and continue learning and adapting to figure out how we can use this plant and other applications. Obviously, the soil health aspect of everything is something that really, really interests me. Obviously, I agree with what James said there. I mean, obviously, we've created a situation where we got to start cleaning stuff up. And I look at hemp as the answer to that. So, but most importantly, above all else, is to give the small town farmer, family farm, the ability to keep that farm in their family name, and create a succession plan that doesn't include selling to the largest farmer in the area and consolidating it, and just a continuous rotation of grain, whether that be soybean or corn. It's not working. So
Thank you for all of your answers there. We really appreciate that. This has me thinking a lot about, we have folks from grain, fiber, and the cannabinoid sectors here on the call today. And so we're talking a lot about potential uses for hemp. What end uses do you see as having the most potential growing forward, either regionally where you are or nationally, even globally? And which uses do you see as perhaps being the most overhyped or oversold?
Yeah, I guess we could just follow the same order, to answering the questions. Yeah, that's tough. I mean, as from our company, because we do both grain and fiber, right now we're really excited about unlocking the nutritional potential of hemp. we're sort of stagnated in hemp adoption as a food in the cupboards of consumers because there's only so many things you can do with hearts, right? Is sprinkle it on your salads, crust your fish. And so we're really excited about finding other formats for hemp, be that in snacks or extrusions or protein isolates that are better ingredients. So how do we get that hemp food in a format that's more palatable or easier to use by the consumer? I think that's an underhyped, I guess, the opposite of your question, but an underhyped opportunity for hemp. And so that's something we're really focused on. We definitely, fiber is the biggest part of our business right now. We're seeing lots of growth and demand on the fiber side. The absorbent properties of the herd are really great. So we have a strong demand in animal bedding, be that equestrian chickens or small pets. I think that's just going to continue to grow. And we see a lot of other opportunities around that in servicing the animal sector. There's a lot of complementary opportunities. And so once you have a product that's fairly easy to adopt, like a bedding, you're just there for the animals to urinate on, and that's, people can accept that a little bit easier than something more complicated like a feed product. And so we're excited about how once you get a consumer or user to accept it, it opens up the door for lots of other opportunities for them to see the benefits of hemp. Long term, definitely composites, automotive, and construction materials. Those I think are the big opportunities for the bast fibers. Textile, to kind of a lesser degree, I'd say that's probably, in my mind, the one that's more hyped. I think right now is putting hemp fiber in clothing. It's certainly an opportunity and it's happening, but it's more complicated than a lot of people realize. It's more costly than a lot of people realize, and so it's going to take longer to get there. And today, hemp fiber isn't used that significantly in textiles. We certainly hope it will. It's more sustainable than cotton or polyester, but there's a lot of work to be done there to make that happen. And then the volumes in the price point, I mean, cotton, 60, 80 cents a pound. We basically have to make hemp look like cotton to get into cotton manufacturing processes. Very difficult, to meet a cost, price point of cotton. So I think that's maybe a little more overhyped now, but in the long run might be a big opportunity.
Yeah, this is James. I guess I agree. I think we just stick to Trey's order. We'll be able to segue smoother. But echo a lot of the points that Trey brought up at Tiger Fiber. The thing that we see is the most exciting now and in the long term is coming primarily from the construction side of the industry. It is candidly the main driver of what got us to want to found the company was seeing a lot of the stuff overseas and just in Canada with hemp home building. All the altruistic things with it being, arguably a carbon negative construction material, with it helping with the internal health of the residents and inhabitants, and then just the sheer performance of everything over the years since 2016, being able to see these things all the way through, paired with nationally, we have almost like an epidemic of shortages in affordable housing units, and we just have a market housing shortage. We see a lot of, challenges in areas that have tragically in dense populated areas been exposed to wildfires. And, the science is there that, hemp, specifically the hempcrete portion, and more insulation products that are coming online that are both just fire resistant and almost smoke proof. Those materials are just in demand. A lot of innovation on how to work with hemp in construction. Just here in St. Louis, we're working on a series of hemp home projects under an affordable housing campaign. And we're able to, reduce the need for as many laborers on site. And because of the cost of the hemp construction materials versus conventional materials, we're able to bring, homes that are 1,500 square feet to market for under $250,000. That alone, replicating that over and over again, and the sustainability from the farm side that demands that much hemp to be grown for something that's readily adoptable right now. Got to give our tip of the cap to everyone that's been working both behind the scenes and publicly at the U.S. Hemp Building Association. If it's not widely known, please, yell it as loud as you can that as of this past year, hemp is now approved in the, International Residency Code for IRC. We've been getting, ASTM certifications on materials we're bringing to market and able to get homes permitted, both for building and occupancy. That's a right here, right now, and something that we could see demanding, hundreds of thousands of acres if we wanted to get into the granular details of it takes around 4 or 5 acres of hemp to produce enough hurd and fiber for a house. And then you think of how many millions of houses we're short. I mean, math is math. I also agree with Trey though on some of the things that are more overhyped being in the textile industry. And trust me, I have almost every clothing item you can imagine that's made out of hemp. Most of it is either handcrafted in Eastern Europe because that's actually what it takes to make hemp into clothes that you want to wear. Because there's no hemp textile infrastructure in the United States. And then just globally, the synthetics and cotton make up over 90% of what the infrastructure is built around. We've tried, since day one to get into, a lot of the fashion brands just to learn we don't produce the volume. We don't have the quality. And even if we did, it would still need to work by shipping it overseas to get made into clothes. If you wanted to go with a non-handcrafted route. I see a lot of potential in it down the road, but I really think that is going to revolve around one, consumers, and then two, like the brands really wanting to make an investment specifically in hemp. But yeah, I agree to agree. It's awesome. I mean, I'll continue to buy as much hemp clothing as I can, but as far as the US industry that we're in, it's a little ways away.
Alex here. Yeah, I tend to agree, obviously, with everything they just said. It seems like you can almost find anything you can't find anything this plant doesn't do. So you can go down rabbit holes. I found myself in those many a time. So if you're listening, you're thinking about starting and trying to find a niche in there, there's almost nothing the plant can't do. So it's pretty cool I've seen stuff in batteries and all of that. So I didn't know how to actually answer your question, but I think the approach is more of like, what is the lowest hanging fruit that's going to increase the acreage grown here in the States versus, what are the long-term goals? And, just by happenstance, we have been focusing more on the paper route. Paper and packaging, I feel, is a massive industry. And the environmental impact and that type of marketing to some of these large companies that consume just insane. Like I didn't know this, but do you guys know that there's a pizza company, there's like 2 billion pizza boxes that are used every year. So that combined with some of the softwood shortages, what we're seeing in Europe and the EU, as well as the fires in Canada with softwood pulp, I think it's putting a little bit of perspective into some of these paper companies that the other side of their business is forestry. So it's not like they're really in a hurry to replace raw material production. So, approaching it from an environmental, carbon credit, carbon sequestration aspect to give them a marketing edge that they can, figure out how to pay back to increase the price to make sure it's feasible for the farmer to make money is kind of what we've been focusing on. I mean, just in my area alone, there's 2 or 3 paper mills in Wisconsin that, have all the labor force needed to run that thing, but it's not up and running. So trying to figure out how to plug and play and use existing infrastructure in some of these, in my opinion, monopolized industries from the start to the finish is really hard to penetrate. And I think that, like just what they said, the cotton industry, the textile industry, the clothing industry, I mean, there isn't really much made here in the States, and definitely no clothes. So instead of saying overhyped, because I don't want to down anybody that has that vision, and I encourage them to do so, because it's going to take an army of people that have a vision to make this what it could be. So I don't know about overhyped, but I would say much more difficult to penetrate. And right now, I think what we need to do is increase acres, increase demand, and take the lowest hanging fruit out there. So, and I think that speaks to a lot of why, Tiger Fiber and IND Hemp have been so successful in what they've done. And we look to do the same thing here in Wisconsin.
Very cool. So you guys are all industry leaders. You're all pioneers in this space. I'm sure there's a really steep learning curve in starting up your companies and getting them to where they are today. Can you all just like speak to what your biggest challenges or what your biggest pinch points are in your businesses right now?
How long is this podcast?
We're gonna need the nutshell version.
Yeah, I like to break it into 3 categories. You got raw material or agriculture, you got processing or infrastructure, and then you got markets and adoption. And so all 3 of those have their own different sets of challenges, and we spend a lot of time in all 3 of them. And you really have to. I think you really have to focus on all 3. You can't spoil a bunch of acres if there's no processor, right? You can't turn on a market if there's no raw material available. So it's a delicate balance. For us, we're getting pretty good at the agriculture now. We're at about 30,000 acres cumulative, having been contracted and grown. So not that we don't have things to work on for sure, but we're probably at that 80% mark, working on the optimization of the remaining 20. In markets, we're seeing more demand than we can process now. But that's probably where our pain points are right now is in processing, and that's a multi-factor issue. One is staffing. So we're in a rural agricultural area in a town of 1,350 people, 45 minutes away from the nearest decent sized town. So staffing has been very challenging. We've been trying to add a second shift, and it's just been almost impossible. So that's one issue. Is being able to add more runtime hours. Another issue is kind of co-products. So whenever you process, you don't make just one thing, you make multiple things. And we see a lot of demand for 1 or 2 things, which means there's, which are really, 80% of what we make, but that means there's still 20% of stuff piling up that we're trying to find uses for. And then just kind of consistency is another thing, whether that's in throughput or quality or uptime. I mean, we're kind of up and down in our production, whether that's because of not having the staff one day or wet bales or something. I mean, there's just a lot of variability we have to deal with, breakdowns and jamming. And so right now, that's where a lot of our emphasis is really trying to optimize our processing infrastructure so we can be consistent and run as many hours as possible.
Yeah, almost identical to everything that Trey said. I think that's the commonality in the industry is there's really 3 different pinch points in any company that's in the industry now, or anything that anyone looking to enter the market can experience is we didn't have the luxury of having any part of the supply chain established. Again, on the farm side, it's only really been legal for farmers to do this for the last 5 years. And then just the learning curve on, the entire agronomy of what is just hemp production, let alone the different subsets versus, fiber versus grain versus cannabinoid production. They're all 3 different skill sets, 3 different types of cultivation, processing, and handling that goes into that. And so, I think the biggest uniform theme that I can speak on is just the time of the learning curve. I mean, it's taken us at Tiger Fiber, ever since 2018, and that's with help from, universities and private research, industries, lending us helping hands along the way, but just to find the right types of genetics that come from the right latitude, from the right regions that'll work with our soil types. That was a big learning curve. Tried 13, only 1 worked. And then you get into the whole processing side of things. There is no real turnkey. You turn this thing on and this is what you're going to get on the end. So much of it is almost artistic because it goes back to, the agronomy side, the quality of your hemp stalks and the quality that you intended them to go into a product is going to determine your process. Again, our focus going into everything was on construction materials. So we had an idea of the type of equipment that we would need to utilize and the types of talent we would need to onboard to essentially hybridize timber milling and cotton ginning. That's what hemp kind of acts like. It's like wood and, a bass fiber. To get those end results was, 3+ years of learning, and we're still learning every day just to hit the product development side, where the challenge is the development of products to match up with scalability, which requires, a lot of uniformity, and then also learning things that you didn't know. Again, our whole thing was hempcrete and insulation products. But with that, you get absorbent materials, you get dust and other things that you then have to develop products around, because you just can't throw away half of what your yields are from that farmer. And so that's taken time. We're still, even with close relationships that we have to end users, some that also demand more material than we can realistically produce today. There's like testing that goes on to this. I mean, if we want to get into, we'll just keep using construction for the tiger fiber theme. If we want to get into, like supply chains, we need to make sure that we have testing and development done, like from compression strength testing to fire testing. On the animal and husbandry side, you got to talk about, microbial and bacterial things, because you just can't introduce products into this marketplace that are going to get people sick. You have to test for that, and your manufacturers test for that. And so, yeah, it's really just the time and the learning, because we've only really had, 5 years to go at it. And it really will take people, unfortunately, like taking lumps on the front end, so that people on, the back end and the future generations don't have to start from scratch. But yeah, we're starting from scratch and learning as we go.
Yeah, Alex here. No need to repeat what Trey and James said. I mean, I agree with all of that. For me, just something that they didn't touch on is, yeah, I've never been a part of an industry or a business that has so many regulatory bodies restricting the pathway to success. So I think education and trying to inform our leadership at our capital here in Wisconsin on what can be done and connections can be made. Not like we have much of a lobbying power. I mean, we do a majority of the acres here in Wisconsin. And then you also have, there's a bad taste, just to say it truthfully. There's a bad taste in a lot of farmers' mouths from what happened in 19 and 20 and 21, and on the cannabinoid side and the big rush that went to it. And so one of our things for my company is, we don't have any large backing. The access to capital is always an issue, especially if it's your primary crop. It's really hard to access credit lines and do the things you need to do to be able to grow for the season. So, we made it a priority that if anyone's going to contract us, they have to be involved in the financing of it. And I think that really weeds out a lot of the bad actors. I shouldn't say bad actors. I think everyone has got the intention to do something good in this industry. There are some that are bad, but most people have the right intention. But ideas, unfortunately, you can't pay your fertilizer bill. So to vet them out and to have them help you with the types of financing needed to take it all the way from seed to final product is something that we've prioritized, which has helped us out find really good partners that are in it for the long haul. Got a couple of banks that have worked with us that we're very grateful for, and they see the same thing that we do, that Wisconsin needs a third rotational crop option. We have to figure out how this plays in the rotation. So speaking with local farmers, speaking with large landowners, because like I said, I'm a first generation farmer, so everything that we grow on is in rotation from something else. So figuring all of those little things out on what follows better, how to be a good steward and leave the land in good shape so that you can access more land in the future. That's really what we focus on. And it's not so much a pain point, but it never helps to, you tell them, oh, I'm a hemp farmer and I'm looking to rent your land, and their only experience has been negative. So try to educate as much as I can, explain what we're doing. And it's been a long road the last 5 years, but I finally see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and super excited about it.
That's fantastic. I'm hearing a few comments here about, phytoremediation, carbon sequestration. I'm thinking about places in the rotation, and I have a lot of questions, but this is a processing podcast, not an agronomy one, so I'll save those. But what I do hear about in terms of pinch points are processing capacity and acreage to fulfill those needs. But this equipment is not easy to come by, and nor is it expensive. And so the decortication processing itself, the materials, can you talk a little bit about your journey to get into this space, to find those equipments, maybe, doing some modifications to those, but what's that journey been like for you to get established in a space that we have not had in this country for 70 years?
Yeah, and James, I think articulated this pretty well. It's a long road to hoe. I mean, and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, black eyes along the way. But I think in general, it always kind of starts with beg, borrow, and stealing, right? Like what else is happening in other industries, and how can I adapt that? Like James was talking about, and we really focus more on textile processing equipment and modifications to that. And so, I started in the hemp fiber. I was actually in the natural fiber space before in bamboo, before we began looking at hemp in 2014 and 15. So we already had some infrastructure back then in a different company. And but we went out and found people that had done it before and talked to them, right? So like I say, we're building an industry, not a company, but we're not always trying to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes we just need to tweak a few spokes. So that was the idea that we started with, is starting asking a lot of questions and finding folks, and then kind of cobbling stuff together and trying things. That's how it began, was with smaller, pilot lines or lab lines or individual pieces of equipment, hand feeding them, seeing what happened, finding another one, hand feeding into that, seeing what happened, and then trying to design a process around that. And that got us to kind of that rudimentary pilot scale. Then we operated, for a year and a half, 2 years like that. And then it was time to invest in a major scale for us. And for that, we actually, the majority, kind of the core pieces of equipment we bought from a vendor, and they, that was kind of designed. A lot of the equipment suppliers, mainstream equipment suppliers, not the upstart kind of hemp suppliers, but they sell a piece of equipment, but there's lots of different things they do, like in the internals that they change for different applications. So the same piece of equipment might be used in 7 different industries. It's fundamentally the same thing. They just change some of the internals a little bit. And so that's kind of where we ended up, was buying kind of the core pieces of technology from one equipment vendor in an entire kind of consolidated line. And then we bolted onto that the front end and the back end of sort of bale opening and breaking and secondary processing or cleaning and packaging. And so it ends up being a bit of a hodgepodge, but kind of the core decortication part is one vendor. We use a company called LaRoche for that, and there's quite a few out there. You can get a turnkey system. I mean, now from Europe, from a company called Cretus, you're going to pay for it, obviously, but they'll come in and do a total design build scenario, all fully engineered, total complete drawings and installation and everything. And they'll source all the different vendors and put it all together, but not everybody can afford a whatever $10-15 million equipment investment on top of the building and the working capital requirements. So I think there's definitely an opportunity for different levels of getting into it. And there's the small scale. I mean, you can buy a hand feed unit from China right now for a few $1,000s. Probably costs you more in the freight than it does to buy the piece of equipment, where you can just hand feed stalks. And but the key is you got to have demand to justify any of those investments, right? So you've got to figure out what your markets are. So it's definitely there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat, and the key, I think, is to line up, what does my raw material look like? What are the markets I'm trying to go after, and sort of what is the processing infrastructure that will connect those dots?
Yeah, the Tiger Fiber journey has been a unique one. And I think it was just really given the timing of when we decided to look into the industry. The very first time I personally ever got exposed to what hemp processing was, or hemp decortication, was I had read Doug Fine's book Hempbound and got, just blown away by all these things that you can make out of hemp that I had no idea about. My background prior to Tiger Fiber, again, had been in sustainable vegetables and cannabis production, not knowing about what decortication was. And so just started looking online and cold calling people and got a hold of some folks in a town called Drayton Valley, and also in Vegreville in the Alberta province of Canada. Dr. Jan Slosky and Mr. Byron James were running a full, decortication line as part of a Canadian research effort, and they would let you just go up there and visit them, before the pandemic and when the world was a different place. And so went up there and saw all these things that they were making, and taking a step back and really getting to know them and talk to them about the markets they were looking to get driven. There, again, it was like there was no one size fits all solution to hemp fiber processing. There was, bale opening, there was material separation, there was air cleaning, there was threshing, there was scutching, there was, baling just to rerun a bale to further clean it out again, to rerun it and clean it out again. And along that time, there were other companies, here in the States starting to develop, decorticators. We ended up being fortunate enough through the Missouri Department of Agriculture to, through grant funds, pursue hemp fiber processing and how to disrupt mass markets for global good. That was the name of the grant. And so we traveled further throughout Canada and saw what they were doing, traveled throughout Europe and saw what they were doing in the Netherlands and France. And everyone had a little bit of, equipment. A quick Google search of, hemp fiber processing equipment, and you can find all the different manufacturers that are advertising, or had advertised they had equipment. But it was always just different steps along the line of what you want to do to get, the bast fiber separated from the hemp herd. At its core, that's what it came down to. Further looking throughout the United States, our entire natural fiber processing truly does come down to the timber industry and the cotton industry. The timber industry is working with, wood fiber, wood cellulose, and having to get it into different sizes and compressions and densities to go into their application. Cotton ginning, is based around, a crop that's harvested expecting 80%, of a fiber and 20% of, woody, sticky material. Hemp's like the other way around, it's 80% wood, stick, timber material, 20% of that fiber material, but the principles are all there. And so to Trey's point, we couldn't afford any of the European stuff. So we kind of just bootlegged it and worked with a lot of just local engineers and manufacturers being based here in, St. Louis specifically, and then throughout the Midwest. A lot of just material separation equipment manufacturers are just here in town, and then working with other people throughout the U.S. that had been pursuing, hemp fiber processing to give us some guidance on ways that we could separate a bast fibrous material from a woody stalk, clean out the dust and debris, which candidly is mostly just topsoil from farmers. When we get these bales from farmers, what we've been finding is that when they bale it up, you get a lot of just soil in it. You got to get almost all of that out, or any application that we want to apply for becomes moot. And so just step by step, identifying how we take a bale that's dense, has moisture, and needs to fit into equipment that can separate the fibers and the wood, and then size those down, is really a lot of, aerodynamics and mechanical engineering, just knowing, to Trey's point, what you want to do at the end of material. You have to work your way backwards, or else, you're going to be doing a lot of modifications when you could have cut some steps out on the front end.
Alex here. So for us, obviously, we're focused more on the growing side of things. We're just getting our feet wet into the processing. We've been grain cleaning and cleaning grain fields for a couple of genetic producers for the last couple of years. And obviously we have the fiber bales left in the field. So like I said, we're just getting our feet wet, but I mean, it's always one consistent thing, which is decortication is the biggest thing you have to do. So, we've looked at companies like IND, like Tiger Fiber, and it kind of came to fruition just based on necessity. I mean, you can't be shipping bales to Tiger Fiber or IND from Wisconsin. It's just logistically doesn't make sense, especially with what the current price is for baled fiber. It just doesn't make sense. So most of it is out of necessity and because somebody had to do it. So we started, like I said, in the grain cleaning side, shaker tables, aspirations, all that kind of stuff. And now we just purchased our first decorrugator. It's nothing too huge, but it's going to get us the ability to learn a lot, figure out how to expand, and hopefully look forward into picking the brains of these two gentlemen on the phone and figure out how the heck they did it so good.
Oh, just real quick, man. Trial and error. I always forget a little piece of the story. We bought a one-shot, mobile decorticator,
Sure.
right around 2019. I'm not saying, anything bad about the manufacturer. It was just billed as, a small pilot decorticator. And we tried our best to run it just to realize that volume and throughput really does determine everything. Given what we pay our farmers, what we pay our people, you have to have that throughput to be able to pay just minimum wage and to pay a farmer a fair price. So that's what the lesson that we learned in 2019. And then had planned to scale then, but then the pandemic happened. So we had 2.5 years to kind of go back to the drawing board and think of all the things that we would do different. But yeah, I definitely would advocate those that can try and learn on as small as a scale as they possibly can to avoid a lot of financial hardship. Because once you get the material into the marketplace, there's really low hanging fruit out there. And there's people that are actively looking. Well, you just mentioned that you're in the paper pulping side of things. In Wisconsin, in that region of the country is a great place to be in that industry. But the buyers will tell you what it needs to look like and how much you need. So definitely trialing out on an R&D scale if you can is great before you even think about scaling up, because until you learn what you need to be doing at any level, you have no idea what it looks to multiply that out.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So we've spent a lot of time with the company that previously owned this machine, and spent a lot of weeks there and made sure we understood what was going on that side. And I've had plenty of help from the people here in Wisconsin that are some mentors to me and have been in large ag and large processing. And so that's kind of how we decided on what we went with. So it's, like I said, but our point of view is almost everybody I've ever talked to in regards to contracting or regards to, what their spec is coming out of the field is kind of when I realized that, maybe there's some things that us farmers can do in the field to make processing easier. So we're always trying to innovate that. We're always trying to figure out using existing technologies and, splitting the field up into separate sections and running trials on different machines to see and sending them to the people that contract us. And, I feel like it should be a partnership between, the processor and the farmer. And you just tell the farmer how you want it. He's probably got a solution to do so.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I want to get into marketing a little bit because you guys mentioned that the demand needs to be there to justify the investment. And, we know there's a lot of competition in the food and fiber industry with things like timber and cotton. So I'm curious, what kind of marketing strategies have you guys been using to promote hemp and hemp products and kind of build up that demand?
Yeah, so I think one of the things we learned a while ago is, the industries you want to serve, you got to go and find those companies. So we go to the trade shows for other industries, whether that's nonwovens or textiles or pet animals. I mean, all those kinds of things. So that's a great way to learn about the industries you want to service, as well as get your products in front of them, start getting feedback, and make connections. A lot of it's relationship building and networking and somebody tell somebody else and all that. And occasionally you'll get a big company that'll kind of host an event and like a lunch and learn, and they'll they'll have lots of different people in the organization that are interested but don't know how to use it. So you do a lot of education in the process of like, what is this, and what is our experience, and how can that help them? So it really takes a long to understand the materials and the properties and how you can use it so you can help the customers, because most of them have never used hemp before, and in some cases they're speaking a different language. So a lot of internal, in the past we did a lot of internal trialing and product development and that kind of stuff. Just say, okay, what is this? What is this material, and how does it perform, and how does it compare to the incumbent? So understanding that there's very few, if any, opportunities, low-hanging fruit, I think, like Alex was saying, out there that is for hemp specifically. I mean, hemp has to replace something else for it to get rapidly adopted. For somebody to develop a new opportunity using hemp takes years. So understanding what the incumbent materials are is critical, and understanding how to communicate to the people that use those materials is critical. So you can tell them, how is this different than polypropylene, or how is this different than wood, or whatever it is. So, a lot of it isn't traditional sort of advertising, like ads and that kind of thing. It's really more of a technical sales cycle, to get everybody on the same page. A lot of sampling. You do a lot of sampling and send it out, from hand samples all the way up to pounds and tons before you get into program. You're talking couple year sales cycle in some cases for the more complicated things. Well, we came around to help expedite the adoption, and also to generate higher margin at lower volumes in the early stages, is vertical integration. And so we actually developed a couple of brands and go direct to retail and to consumer through e-commerce. And that helped us a lot to get, real feedback from users on some of the products and get that onto the market. So we do a little bit more traditional advertising in that space with the finished branded products. And then we have a strategy that we implement where if we have a customer we're trying to onboard, and they're kind of like, well, I like it, I want to do something, but I'm, today is not the day, and we're not sure if you've got the capacity or the consistency or whatever it is, we try to find a path to get them business and pull our product through them. So whether that's we develop our own product and we're a customer of our customer, or we find another customer for them and try to give them on a platter, like, hey, here's an opportunity. It gets you comfortable working with us, doing business with us, using our material. And for instance, we just did that with a customer, a non-woven customer in Canada, and we pulled through and made a product with them. And they're like, hey, what was this one thing you sent us? And we didn't know you could do that. And we're like, oh yeah, we can do that. And they're like, all right, well, let's talk automotive bidding now. So just, it took them working with us and running a truckload of fiber. And then they're like, okay, like there's something here. So that's some of our strategies.
Yeah, on the Tiger Fiber side, it's been a unique path forward just to find markets for all the different products that we make. And I think the biggest thing that we always promote, just getting it out of the way and out front, is that our biggest, talking point is that by our farmers growing hemp, that is, upfront, one of the most valuable things that we could do for the planet, for the environment, and for, society. That is, the farmers really are carrying the lion's share of sustainability. Because as soon as we get the material, we have to start, putting like energy, fossil fuel, like logistics are things. We move things by trucks. So we're always starting with an A+ and kind of working our way down, but we get that out there on the forefront, that any excuse we can get a farmer to rotate hemp and that into their rotation is just a good thing for the planet. But then the challenge, once the farmer's done their job, is for us to take that harvest, turn it into something that we could sell so that we can afford to pay them again next year. And so it's been a blend of B2B and B2C. There were already a number of companies out there looking for hemp materials. We have some good friends, colleagues, and customers on the East Coast that are making plastic-free dissolvable sanitary wipes out of hemp. They've been chasing this one down for over a decade. There are people in the plastics compounding world that have been looking for a sustainable filler that had thermal properties, which hemp has. They were already out there, been at this before I even knew that hemp fiber was a thing. People have been building materials out of, hemp for homes for the last 30 years. If you want to go into, mass production that was happening in the UK in the late 90s and mid 2000s, they already kind of knew what they wanted. But that's only, half the battle. There were only so many customers that already knew exactly what they wanted and how they wanted it. And so to the consumer, we brand and market, the sustainability blended with performance. I mean, we make animal bedding and an industrial spill absorbent too. It's not, and because it's hemp, you should buy it. It's 4 times more absorbent than what it's replacing. You'll use less of it. On the animal side, it's naturally hypoallergenic, and we take the dust out of it. That reduces, the amount of vet bills you're going to incur for just simple things like runny noses and runny eyes, not even before you get into respiratory things. My wife's a school teacher, and one of our pets is her classroom bunny. I could just tell you from our basement in her classroom, there's less dust and less smell around. Those are real performance things that are unique to hemp versus what it's replacing. On, something like a shop absorbent, again, it's a non-abrasive material. So if you're in real life, our number one outlet for our, industrial absorbent is farmers and people that work on, tractors and other farm tools with a lot of hydraulic spills. They notice a lot less abrasion and corrosion in their shop by just switching materials. That's again another performance trait. We have, folks that are making, you know, I guess you call them like joint tubes, cigarette tubes. I don't know what it is, but being in the cannabis industry and contributing, to a lot of trash and waste by people throwing away plastic. We have a customer in Oregon that makes fully biodegradable, dissolvable hemp plastic tubes to reduce their footprint. There's a lot of just different things out there. I mean, tensile strength, mold resistance, rot resistance. That if you to develop the product to that aspect, you blend the sustainability and the performance. There's limitations to that, obviously. I mean, I'm not going to go out there and say that hemp's, stronger than steel or, like totally, carbon negative. But there's some room in the middle to prove out the facts. And there's still, however many years of research we have down the road to find out what the real performance characteristics are besides, thermal resistance and sustainability and absorbency. But that thermal resistance, absorbency, and sustainability are pretty good 3 to advertise right now.
Yeah, for me, I mean, as we work towards vertical integration, I mean, we don't do a lot of, marketing because most of all of our fields are contracted in advance, so we know where they're going. Most of my marketing is done through networking, and like I said before, it's from my point of view, when the contracts do come that are going to be large enough to start including other farmers in our area. Until then, I just try to be out there, communicate with them, show them what we're doing, the difference between fields, why we plant density in this field this way, why we do it this way, and educating and being an open book to the farmers around this area has gotten me more success and further along in relationships. And, you start treating people and educating people like that, all of a sudden, opportunities start falling into place. So like I said, we're just getting our feet wet in the processing side. So I'm sure, that strategy is going to have to change. I don't know if I'm ready to put on another hat yet, so I might have to hire somebody. but yeah, we're really excited about it. And as far as marketing goes, it's all just been word of mouth, networking across the community and across the country. And kudos to UW-Madison and the other colleges that have been involved this year. I mean, that's a huge part of this is connecting with people that can connect the dots. So I can do what I'm good at, and they can connect me to someone that's good at what they do. So finding the right people to get in the room is, the biggest thing. And for the last 5 years, it's been tough because you got to wade through a lot of negative things to find the person that's actually genuine and has the same interest and motivated by the same end result as you. So I know we got a hard stop here, so I'll keep my answer short.
So this is going to be a quick 2-parter, but just what is the biggest lesson you've learned as a pioneer in this industry that might benefit other entrepreneurs who are thinking about starting their company in the hemp space? And what has you the most excited about the future of hemp?
Yeah, Good question. Stay focused. Don't spread yourself too thin and try to be everything to everybody. I mean, it was kind of articulated earlier about all the different things hemp can do. It's a bit of a soapbox for me. They say, oh, hemp's 20,000 usages of hemp. And I was like, well, that's great, but only 12 of them can make any money. And so figure out like what actually works for you and stay focused on it and don't get too broad. Have the right expectations, be conservative in what you think. I think as entrepreneurs, people are eternally optimistic, and it always takes twice as long and costs twice as much money. So be prepared for that on the front end as a reality. I guess I'm most excited about just seeing mainstream adoption and penetration. I think someday my hope is that people won't buy products with hemp in them because they have hemp in them. They'll buy products that have hemp in them and not even know there's hemp in them because it was the right product at the right price with the right performance. And, we'll integrate into existing supply chains without needing to be a novelty, right? It'll just be part of the ecosystem of manufacturing and consumerism. And I think hemp has opportunities to do that, not in 20,000 places, but in definitely, some. And stay focused and vigilant on those, and hopefully you'll go into Walmart and you'll buy a toy for your kid and it'll just have hemp in it because it makes sense.
Yeah, if there's two things that I can advise, it would be to have a plan before you start spending any money, and don't make any assumptions. Definitely find out why you're going to work with hemp and what you're going to make it into, so that who you're going to sell it to and how much. Because at the end of the day, we are all trying to run a business, and we have to make sure that financially the ideas and all the things that get us excited have a real financial outcome that can keep the party going. To farmers, I wouldn't just go growing hemp because you think there's going to be a buyer out there. Definitely verify and validate it. Make sure that, contracts are in place, make sure financing is in place. That's what we do on our end. We sign off on binding grower contracts and make sure that we have the money set off to the side so that when the farmers produce a harvest, the money's there to pay them. And then likewise, we wouldn't be doing any of this on top of, the farming, any of the processing, if we didn't have buyers on the back end to keep the lights on and the people employed. So definitely make a plan and don't assume anything.
Alex here, I would say first off, like they said, I mean, find your passion, figure out why hemp means something to you, and do understand that you're entering into an industry that's about 5 years old right now, and that it's going to be a long battle, and it's not something that can be a side job. This is a full-time thing. You need to be focused and dedicated every morning and find a way to keep passionate about it. I would say as, some advice, look in your local area, look at the infrastructure, the manufacturing, or the things that, I see in my small town that, have either gone under. Look at your local labor force. What skill sets do they have that, a raw material such as hemp would demand, and then try to plug and play those with connecting with those businesses and networking and, showing people how hemp can be a replacement for some of the raw material that they're currently using, and try to revitalize your area. I mean, what works in Texas and what works in California and Florida doesn't work in Wisconsin. So understanding your local demographic, your market, is a huge thing. Now on the farming side, find somebody that is willing to put skin in the game so that you're not floating the debt for 6 months while they turn a profit in 30 days, is something that I have put as my top priority. I don't contract with anyone unless they're willing to take on the same financial risk as me. That usually weeds out a lot of the people that are selling ideas and don't have the capital to back it up.
Well, this has been really great. I just want to thank you guys for making the time and joining us. I really wish we had more time, because the conversation has been really good. I love your guys' passion, and I wish you the best of luck going forward. So, thanks again for joining us.
Appreciate it, guys.
been a great
Appreciate it.
discussion.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Brought to you by the University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension.